Hello Raptors fans and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we're going to be talking about the Raptors game against the Washington Wizards. But before we do that, we are going to be discussing some more draft prospects. There are a number of players who are on the move in mock drafts, and there is one guy that we will be talking about today whose stock has risen tremendously since the beginning of the season and now is garnering lottery buzz. I happen to like him a lot as a prospect, but before we get into this, please check out the description of this video because I have done a lot of draft analysis so far, and I've talked about a lot of the prospects that are going to be drafted within the Toronto Raptors draft range. So anybody really in the lottery, I've spoken about most of them. So if you want to, please check the description and take a look before you leave a comment telling me that, forget about this guy. You got to talk about this guy. But yeah, let's get into this because we're going to be talking about a very exciting prospect right now, a guy that I personally really like. A player by the name of Jase Richardson. Now, Jase Richardson, he is an 18-year-old 6'3" shooting guard who plays for the Michigan State Trojans. He is originally from Berkeley, California, and he was a four-star recruit coming out of high school, and he committed to Michigan State. And he originally came off of the bench this season in his freshman year until the guy ahead of him, Jeremy Fears Jr., got sick and they had to find a replacement, so they tapped him, said, "You're starting tonight." And as a result of that, he played against Oregon and he put up 29 points in that first game coming into the starting lineup. And they never really looked back. He has grabbed onto that starting lineup with a death grip, and he has been really popping off and showing what he's capable of. And he has really rocketed up the draft boards since that fateful day, and he has looked very good. And especially as an 18-year-old freshman, he has really shown a lot of skill. So Jase Richardson plays the off-ball guard role, and the first thing that you're going to be looking at when you're talking about an off-ball guard is their shooting, because shooting is so important in this day and age. What are they able to do when they shoot the ball? And he's shooting 41% on 3 attempts per game in only 25 minutes, so that is actually quite good. A lot of that is coming from catch and shoot spot-up shots, but a lot of it is also coming from self-generated off the dribble shots as well. And he is a good free throw shooter. He's shooting 84% from the free throw stripe. So everything is looking good here from a shooting perspective. I don't think that there's any reason to doubt that he will be a good shooter at the next level. I think that this is one of his top skills, but he has a lot of other things in his tool belt from a scoring perspective. So first of all, he has a good first step, quite a good first step. So he's able to catch the ball and attack his man off of the dribble. And once he creates a little bit of separation, or once he gets into the lane with his man on his hip, he's really shifty. He has a lot of wiggle to his game. He sells his moves very well, and he can create. He is a good player going to the basket. He can create open looks for teammates. He has good vision and processing in that regard. He actually gets to the line quite a bit as well, based on his usage. He has a lot of skill with his moves and the ball in his hands, and one of his best attributes is a lethal step back. So if you've ever seen in the NBA some of the top guys who are able to create a ton of separation, guys like James Harden, guys like Damian Lillard with their deadly step back, he's got something like that, and he covers a lot of ground on the step back and can create a huge gulf of separation between himself and his defender. So that's a really nice skill to see. He is very efficient as a guard. So he has a 62% true shooting percentage, and that's buoyed by the fact that, he is a very good three-point shooter. And also he goes to the line quite a bit. And those two types of plays, he's shooting 84% from the line. That's very good. And when you go there quite a bit and you're shooting a good percentage from 3, your efficiency is going to be quite good. So he is looking like a pretty competent scorer. Let's talk about some of the negatives. So if you watch him and if you see him on the game tape, he is quite small for his position. He, I think, is generously listed as 6'3", And he is not really a point guard, or at least he is not being asked to play as one at this level. He is being played at the off-guard spot, so he is catching and attacking. He gets to use the pick and roll some of the time, but I would say that he is not being utilized in that point guard role. And I'm not sure if that would be where he would play at the next level. I think that there is potential for him to be a point guard. I think that his processing is pretty good. I think that he is competent in the pick and roll, but right now he is more of a scorer. He's more of a shooting guard, and that's kind of how you have to evaluate him at this point. And if he is in that role at the next level, he's going to be undersized for his position at 6'3", and it looks as though he has a, average wingspan. In terms of his athleticism, I think that this is a plus here. I think that he is a good athlete, a pretty good vertical athlete, and he has to kind of wind up to get a big explosion as a vertical athlete, but he can get up there. One of his best attributes is, as I mentioned before, he has a good first step, so he has some pretty good explosiveness off of the dribble. He has really good lateral foot speed, and he has very active swivelly hips, so he can stay attached to and body up against players that he is defending on the perimeter. He can slide with guys very easily. He is a good point of attack defender, and I think that this is a translatable skill. I think that he will be a good defender at the next level, especially at the point of attack. The lack, I think, of maybe size and wingspan, that is a negative because a lot of the time length will help when you need to be disruptive. So getting your hand on loose balls, deflecting passes and shots, bothering shooters and that sort of thing. That may be a bit of a concern at the next level, but at the point of attack, a ton of point of attack defense is simply being able to move with your man, stay attached, and not give any daylight or driving opportunities to that player. So I think that at the point of attack at the next level, he is going to be a plus player. And it's not like he is completely not a disruptive player. He averages just under a steal per game in 25 minutes per game, so he does get a decent amount of steals, but it's not as though he is being extremely disruptive. I just like his ability to stay with his man, so I think that there's potential there. One thing to note about his defense is that he's on both ends of the court. It really seems as though he has a high compete level. He is going out there and he is really giving a good effort on both ends, so that is something that you love to see. Tom Izzo, obviously very good coach, and he has, coached this guy up. It looks as though he is going to be a competitor, and hopefully that remains true in the NBA. So this is kind of looking like a 3-level scoring guard. And I think that at the next level, there's some concerns that the height will limit his ability to score around the rim. But as long as he's drawing free throws at a decent rate, that kind of takes the place of interior scoring. That is where you can add some consistency to your scoring, because a lot of players who are perimeter oriented, who shoot a lot of jump shots, their scoring effectiveness, if you average it out, it can be very good, but there can be feast and famine. So if you're really hot from outside one game, you can really pile on the points, but then the next game, if your shot is off, then it can tail off. But he does go to the free throw line, so maybe that will help steady his scoring if he doesn't have a shot going from outside. Another thing to note is that he barely turns the ball over, which is not too surprising. His usage rate is pretty low, and he is an off-ball player, so he's not dominating the ball, which is a lot of the time where you see those turnovers start to crop up, where they're making lots of passes, trying to get their teammates involved. He is a good passer, but he does not have the ball very often. So this isn't surprising. Under Tom Izzo, the ball is spread around. Everybody kind of gets a bit of a taste. He doesn't get to dominate the ball that much. So it's not really that surprising that his usage rate is low and that he doesn't turn the ball over that much. He does have some playmaking skills. Like, he is not a guy who is unable to find his teammates. He can do it. He's just not doing it as much. And that's, I think, just because of his role. I think perhaps at the next level, you could see him become more of a playmaker. And I don't think point guard is completely off the table here. I think that in the right system, perhaps like with the Toronto Raptors, where you have playmaking up and down the lineup, he could run pick and rolls and play at that point guard spot where, the Raptors are probably looking for somebody who's going to score more as a guard. So interesting thought to keep in mind. Now, another thing is that the advanced stats are extremely kind to Jase Richardson. He is very efficient. The advanced stats such as, his defensive BPM, his offensive BPM, almost everything points to him being a good player. very efficient player, a player who plays good defense. From a statistical point of view, he is one of the better players in this draft class. So in recent memory, he has had a pretty negative game. If we mentioned yesterday when we were talking about Derek Queen, who had a really good game in the night before where he hit a game-winning buzzer beater, Jase Richardson had a pretty forgettable performance against New Mexico State. He shot 1 of 10 from the field. He finished with 6 points, mainly due to going to the free throw line, but his shot was off. And I think that his jumper is a big part of his scoring. That is one of the elements that he's going to lean on, probably as a pro as well, when he's on an NBA team. His shooting is going to dictate how efficient he is going to be and how effective he is going to be from the field. So if you're going to give props to a player, the single game that he had where he won a game, you got to mention, in recent memory, Jase Richardson did not have a very good game in the round of 32, although he has more chances to redeem himself, enter the Sweet 16, and we'll see how they do. Here's a player comp for Jase Richardson, Norm Powell. So Norman Powell, Storm and Norman, Toronto legend, and now with the Clippers, who has looked like he's taken a star leap and, has really exploded in terms of his role and his significance, and he's taken a step and probably is in the running, if not the favorite for the most improved player. Jase Richardson has a lot of that kind of stuff, the step back, the great first step, being a smaller shooting guard. And also another thing is that Jase Richardson's defense at the college level is very good. And Norm Powell, when he was with UCLA, he was seen as kind of a defensive stopper for them. And that reputation's kind of worn off in the NBA. He's kind of more of a scorer at this level, but I see some comparisons between the two of them, although I would say from a playmaking perspective, Jase Richardson is making reads that, I never really saw from Norman Powell. So I think that the ceiling is higher than where Norman Powell is at right now. But of course, a lot of things broke Norm Powell's way, where he was able, in his role, he took a number of steps forward from where he started his career off and became one of the better scorers in the NBA at the guard position. He is a really explosive scorer. So obviously things would have to go well for Jase Richardson to get to Norm's level as a scorer, but I think that the potential is there. And I think honestly, the potential is even higher than a Norm Powell for Jase Richardson. I'm quite high on him. I think that he looks like he's going to be a good pro. Now, in terms of fit, this is more of a contentious issue, and a lot of the comments in the videos that I make here are talking about how such and such player is not a good fit for the Toronto Raptors. I think that when it comes to fit, there is some merit to looking at what the Raptors have and trying to figure out whether this player is going to, be able to get significant minutes, a role on the team. And I get it here because the Toronto Raptors do have a number of guards. They have a number of off-ball wings that would be competing with Jase Richardson for playing time, and I understand that. However, I don't think that the Toronto Raptors' current roster is set in stone. This is still very early goings from a rebuilding perspective. The Toronto Raptors still have a lot of wiggle room. Not all of the roles, not all of the prospects who are currently on the team are going to be with the Toronto Raptors when they finally start to compete in a year or 2 or 3 years, when they're actually, in the playoffs, in contention. If everything goes right, they will be one of the contenders in the Eastern Conference. Once and if that happens, I don't think that the roster is going to look the same as it does right now. And if you decide to choose a player who maybe isn't as good as one of the players who fell into your lap on draft day, you're going to be kicking yourself just because, you had a player at that position. Tyrese Halliburton, for example, was drafted 12th by the Sacramento Kings, even though they had De'Aaron Fox currently on their team. And some of the teams that passed up on him, like the New York Knicks, the Atlanta Hawks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they had players at his position where they were like, okay, well, we got to draft somebody else. We don't want to draft Tyrese Halliburton. And you're going to be kicking yourself if, Jase Richardson turns into Tyrese Halliburton and for whatever reason, the Toronto Raptors drafted an Onyeka Okongwu or an Obi Toppin at that position just because you didn't want to draft another guard. That could be a big mistake. A lot of the time you have to look, obviously, not just at the fit, but at the talent level. And I think that Jase Richardson does have a pretty intriguing talent level, enough so that it might be worth, if the Raptors do settle on drafting him, trading away some of the other players on the team. And I think that that should be something in the back of your mind when you're considering a prospect. I thought I'd just bring that back up because I haven't mentioned that point in a while. And that's because I do like Jase Richardson. I think he has star potential at the next level. I think that his skills, when you watch him play, he ticks a ton of boxes. He has a lot of potential as a scorer, and perhaps even as a number one option at the next level. He has really nice moves. He's a two-way player. He has isolation skills where he can isolate against his man and create with his great first step. He's a two-way player, even with his size. I think he can play at the point of attack. He'll be good there at the next level. And he's a strong shooter. He can shoot the ball. And it's not really a surprise to see this guy move up the mock drafts from the analysts who are looking at this year's draft class. I think in a weaker draft class, like maybe last year's draft class, Jase Richardson could even be looking at a top 5 pick. This draft is really good. This draft has a lot of strong prospects, and I think Jase Richardson is one of them. So it should be interesting to see where he goes in the draft, whether he keeps rising. If he's going to continue to struggle in March Madness. He had a really good first game against Bryant, but then, kind of had that disastrous performance against New Mexico. So we'll see. They're going to be playing Ole Miss in their next game in the Sweet 16. So we'll see how they do, whether he's able to impress for the rest of the tournament or, whether he takes a step back. He's shown enough that, I'm intrigued by him as a prospect, and I think that he has a lot of potential. So we'll have to see. In any case, that's my draft analysis on Jase Richardson. And now we're going to head over to the game that the Raptors played last night against the Washington Wizards. And the Washington Wizards are a tough team to lose to. And even though they played some of their wily veterans like Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart, the Toronto Raptors were able to come away with the victory. So we're going to get into the player evaluations. We're going to talk about who had the best game. We're going to rank them, from best to worst. And in this game, there was really no contest. The best player on the floor for either team was Yakob Poeltl. So when you look at the stat sheet, Yakob Poeltl is not always the best player from, a stat perspective. Stats, especially for role players like centers who are being evaluated essentially on how they play defense and, screen setting, all of the dirty work that perhaps does not show up in the stat sheet. He can have good games even when his stats don't look very good. And when his stats look pretty good, he can have a dominant game. So he had really good stats. So 21 points on 13 shots. He missed 3 shots all night. So 10 of 13 shooting. He was 1 of 2 from the free throw line with 11 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 3 blocks, 2 turnovers. And that sounds really good, but it was even better than that. I think Yakob Poeltl was completely dominant in this game. He was unbelievably efficient from the field. He has great hands. He can catch very difficult passes and put it up and in. He again was playing fantastic defense, especially against Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr has really struggled against Yakob Poeltl. In the last meeting where Yakob Poeltl played, when Alex Sarr faced up against him, he could hardly beat him because Yakob Poeltl has great foot speed for a big, and he can stay in front of Alex Sarr when he tries to drive to the rim and put up a long arm contest. And, maybe he's not blocking Sarr's shot too much, but he is just literally standing between him and the basket with his arms up. Alex Sarr had 16 points on 19 shots, not an efficient night from him. And then in terms of defense, holistically guarding the Washington Wizards, Yakob Poeltl had 3 blocks, was protecting the basket, moving his feet, and cutting off penetration to the rim. Really, 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 really good game from Yakob Poeltl. He has been, I don't want to say best player, but he is in the conversation being the Toronto Raptors' best player this season. I'm going to say tentatively second best player right now, but he has been so consistent for the Raptors when he plays for them, and he's not playing too much these days just because, as he mentioned, his bosses are the coaches and the management of the team, and he does what they want. So if he rests, that's due to management, it's not due to him. When he does play, he plays well, and he is extremely consistent from game to game. Like, he is entering the conversation of being one of the best centers that this team has ever had. And really, it's a low bar to clear. I think that the best center in franchise history is Marc Gasol. The Raptors got him, a little past his prime, but he was still an elite defender and, was one of the main reasons the Raptors were able to win a championship. But, Yakob Poeltl is moving up that board very, very quickly. And so we should give him his flowers, give him his props. A lot of people are talking about, like, we need a stretch five. We need this and that to play with the other players on the team. But if you watch the games and you watch what he does on the floor, you'll know. You'll just watch and say, like, okay, well, this guy is driving winning. This guy is making the right play most of the time and does a lot for the team. If you want to win games, and I think the Raptors do over the next couple of seasons, I think Yakob Poeltl is just going to be a big part of that. And don't take it from me, take it from the guy that the Raptors just traded for. Talking, of course, about Brandon Ingram, said one of the main reasons he wanted to come to the Raptors was because of this guy right here, Yakob Poeltl. So there you go. Best player in this game by far. Next up, it's a little difficult because it was kind of offense versus defense, but I am going to give the second best player here to Scottie Barnes. I think Scottie Barnes didn't have an amazing night on the offensive end in terms of scoring points, but his floor game, his passing, his defense, his rebounding, there were a lot of really positive things that he brought to the table that weren't scoring that I think really kind of bumped up his stock here and gave him the nod over Immanuel Quickley. So let's look at the stats because it's kind of two stories going on here. So first of all, he had 13 points on 16 shots. That's not good. He was 0 of 5 from 3, so that's kind of the big culprit there. He was just missing his 3-point shots. He has been hitting threes recently, so I'm not like too put off by it. Almost all the shots he's taking these days are catch and shoot, spot up shots. So it's hard to hate the process there, although perhaps, when you shoot your third shot and you're 0 for, you start taking it inside. But let's not split hairs here because I don't think it was like a horrible process night. He just couldn't get his 3 to drop, even though he was open and he wasn't taking bad shots necessarily. He was 3 of 4 from the free throw line. Now we'll get to the impressive stuff. So he had 10 rebounds, which is great. He had 8 assists, ditto, that is awesome. 3 steals, 2 blocks, 1 turnover. So this is a stat sheet stuffing performance, and he was all over the place on the defensive end. He was making plays for his teammates, to Yakob Poeltl, Quickley. He was making plays, kicking it out. He had a number of really nice assists. And then from a defensive and rebounding perspective, he was the man. The guy is one of the better defenders at the forward position. He and Yakob Poeltl kind of lock down the paint and make it very difficult for other teams to get in there and score. And then in terms of the rebounds, so Yakob Poeltl, 11 rebounds, Scottie Barnes, 10 rebounds. Between the two of them, 6 offensive rebounds. That's just paint domination. When you get that from your 2 bigs, those guys are dominating the boards. You're getting all of the second chance opportunities on both ends, really. I think it was just a really great performance in every other category other than scoring. And on the whole, that translates to a good game. And even on offense, when you say he had a bad offensive game, I'm talking about a scoring game, because 8 assists with 1 turnover. And these are real assists too. He's making plays. These are not fake assists. That's a positive night on offense, even if you're not that efficient. So with the, I'd say, slightly positive offensive night and dominant defensive night, he had a really good game. Next up, we'll go to Immanuel Quickley. Immanuel Quickley had a better offensive game than Scottie Barnes did. He had 21 points on 16 shots. It wasn't the most efficient night from the field, so he was 5 of 16 and 3 of 9 from 3. But he did go to the line a whole bunch. He went to the line 8 times. He is good at drawing contact, and part of it is the ability to get past his man. He was driving very well, and I think his explosiveness has returned, and his ability to attack off of the dribble has really started to step up over the past couple of games as he gets his legs back under him, because he has been injured most of the season. So that's a positive. He also had 4 rebounds, 7 assists, that's good to see, 1 steal, 1 block, and 2 turnovers. I think that Immanuel Quickley, Scottie Barnes, and Yakob Poeltl really just won this game for the Toronto Raptors. The 3 of them look definitely a cut above anything that the Wizards can offer, and there's reasons to be optimistic for next season. So when the Raptors aren't blatantly tanking games and they're going to be adding another high-quality starting caliber player in Brandon Ingram, you're probably going to be looking at a lot more wins. These three looked very good, and you want to be able to see these guys playing alongside one another and playing for one another and learning each other's habits and, you know, building those winning tendencies. And I think that they all played very well, and Immanuel Quickley had a good offensive game. And all of them really struggled in the first half. That's kind of why the offensive stats, except for Yakob Poeltl, looked pretty grim. The efficiency, the Raptors were shooting like an ungodly, like just ridiculous, like 25% from the field or something like that in the first half. They were 10% from three, and Quickley was missing just a ton of shots in the first half. But in the second half, things looked a lot more normal, a lot better. Quickley turned a bad game into a good one, and Scottie Barnes ditto, same kind of thing. So those three looked really good. Immanuel Quickley had a good offensive game. Next up, we'll go to Jamison Battle. Jamison Battle had 11 points. He had a good shooting game. He was 4 of 9 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, 3 rebounds, 0 steals, 0 assists, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, and he played 27 minutes. Yeah, that's the life of a shooter. If you're shooting the ball effectively, if you're making your threes, you're going to look good. And he hit 50% of his 3-point shots. I actually am kind of digging what he's doing on defense. I don't think he's, you know, a shutdown defender. I don't even know if he's good, but when you have a shooter, a specialist who is approaching kind of mediocre in terms of defense, that's a role player. That's like a real rotation player. Because most of the time, like a lot of the problems with shooters is that they suck on defense because they're a specialist. It's kind of like a kicker in the NFL. You know, sometimes you kick the ball, and if you're the last person back, you're not tackling anyone, right? Because your job isn't to tackle, it's to kick the ball. I mean, obviously, the NBA is a little different than that. Specialists have to play on both ends of the floor, even if their job is mainly to shoot the three. So you have to play a little bit of defense, but most of the time, shooters are just, pretty hopeless on that end. And I've been seeing a little bit from Jamison Battle. I think that his foot speed isn't quite as bad as some of the guys. Like if you look at a guy like George Niang, who, his foot speed is like glacial. We're not looking at that really with Jamison Battle. He can move his feet a little bit. So, when he hits a bunch of his shots, he's going to have a pretty good game. So good for him. Next up, we'll talk about Ochai Agbaji. Ochai Agbaji, he wasn't as hopeless on offense. So last game he shot 1 for 8, only had 2 points. This game he had 9 points on 3 of 10 shooting, and he was 1 of 4 from 3. So it's a step up from the game before, but still not a fantastic offensive performance. He was 2 of 2 from the free throw line, had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, and 2 turnovers, which is not very good in a low usage role. So I would say still a lot of work to be done on the offensive end. He had some nice plays where he was able to, make an impact without getting the ball. He had a good offensive rebound and put back. I think he needs to do more of that kind of stuff. I think that he needs to make more of an impact when his shot isn't falling, and he needs to shoot the three a bit better. The defense is nice, but again, if you're going to be a 3-and-D player, both of those things need to be happening. You need to have the threes, you need to have the Ds in order to be that type of player. So hopefully he can get things right on the offensive end, and he can go back to being a high-level 3-and-D role player for the Raptors. Next up, we'll look at the bench, and it was very easy to pick a player off of the bench who had a great night for the Raptors. One of my favorite players this season, a guy who's really become a darling for Toronto Raptors fans, and that, of course, is Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead had a big 14 points off of the bench on 5 of 10 shooting. He was 1 of 4 from 3, so, he didn't require his shot to be going in order to make an impact. He was 3 of 5 from the free throw line. He had 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, and he played good defense on Jordan Poole. He was really sticking with Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole sunk the Raptors the last time that the Wizards beat them, when he just kind of went off. And I think he also went off in the other meeting as well. Both of the games that were in Toronto, I think he had big scoring games. And in this one, he did have an efficient night. So he had 23 points on 13 shots, which is good, but he also had 5 turnovers. And a lot of that is just, sticking with him, forcing him out in order to catch it, running hard off of screens, drawing offensive fouls and that sort of stuff. And Jamal Shead is one of the best players in the league at doing that kind of stuff. He is just sticking with players and playing annoying defense. So that's great to see, and the efficiency was really there last night. I'm just Very happy with what I'm seeing from Jamal Shed. And he's another one of those guys, kind of like Poeltl, where sometimes the stat sheet does not show all of the stuff that they're doing. As I mentioned, like drawing offensive fouls, that's a big thing he does. That doesn't show up anywhere on the stat sheet, but he is doing that kind of stuff. And then on offense, he, gets a lot of potential assists just by driving into the lane, finding guys on the perimeter, and also, making smart passes to interior players as well. He has really good court mapping. He knows where to pass the ball, and then when he does make a pass, it's very accurate. I've talked about this at length, but it's great to see him shine in that kind of role. And he only played 20 minutes in this game, so it could have been a lot better of a game. They're kind of holding him back, maybe in order to tank, because he's been so good. After this, we are going to go to Jonathan Mobo, who has been up and down, very up in certain categories and very down in other categories. So he had a better game than the game previous from a scoring perspective. So he had 8 points on 3 of 7 shooting. He was 0 of 1 from 3 and 2 of 4 from the free throw line. So that's not great. Obviously, it's a bit better than some of his other performances offensively. But when you look at what he's contributing in other areas, so big one here, 11 rebounds, 3 of them offensive rebounds. This is another way that he can pitch in and has been doing. So he's been in double-digit rebounds the past 2 games. And I think that he can be a force on the boards. He also had 2 assists and 2 steals with 1 turnover, and I think the assists kind of undersold what he was doing on offense because he does have a good handle on the ball for a big. He does have a good first step for a big. He can handle the ball and get into the lane. It's really about the finishing. His finishing ability, when he gets inside, it's like a $10 move with a 1-cent finish. He is doing those $10 moves where he gets into the paint and just can't seem to convert very well, but he does get his teammates involved and he makes plays for them. So this was more of a positive game on offense than I think the stats indicate. It's hard to say when a guy has a big flaw, whether they're going to be able to move past it, because I really hope that he can become a better finisher. Someone in the comments last video pointed out that the mask could be a factor here, that the mask could be stopping him from being as potent a finisher as he could be, and I really hope that is the case. I mean, there is some evidence that he isn't a great finisher even with the mask off, but yeah. Gosh, he could be a really positive player for the Toronto Raptors. And if he becomes a better finisher, this guy could be like a really solid rotation player, really solid role player for the Raptors. So I really hope he gets there in that regard. Now we're going to talk about like a low light here. Orlando Robinson has been really up and down. He started off very well. He does play good defense. He does rebound. He is a decent passer. He does help run the offense. He was responsible for some of the biggest lowlights that I've ever seen from a Raptor. Maybe one of the biggest lowlights ever as a Raptor. He tried to score on the inside and Alex Sarr blocked him 3 consecutive times under the rim. So he put up a kind of weak sauce hook shot. Sarr blocked it. He grabbed it back, tried another one of those. Alex Sarr blocked that again, blocked it to a teammate, to a Raptor. It was pitched back inside to Robinson again, and he tried another shot and it was blocked again. That was horrendous, and then he got posterized. So yeah, I don't know, man. I was happy with him earlier in the season when I saw some of the stuff he could do, but the stuff he can't do is really becoming apparent. The finishing is perhaps too big of a problem to ignore. So anyway, that was the game. A couple of other players played, but I think we'll end it there and we'll just talk about the game as a whole. So the Raptors did a good job of keeping it close. The Raptors, if you're looking at it thinking that maybe they should be losing this game, you kind of have to hand it to Darko a little bit. He was managing the game and keeping it close until it just became the Raptors' skill level just outshone the Wizards. And yeah, Yakob Poeltl was just far too good to play significant minutes in this game. If you were cheering for a loss, he was unbelievable. And Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley were also very good. And the Wizards have some talent. They also were kind of quietly tanking. Chris Middleton was playing well, even though he didn't shoot very well. But he played well, and he only played 22 minutes. Jordan Poole had 23 points. He only played 22 minutes. So they were doing a similar thing to what the Raptors do. They played their bench quite a bit, but the Raptors were a little too talented to lose this game. So it was nice to see like a bit of a bounce back. I think the game against the Spurs was pretty horrible to watch, and this was a good palate cleanser. But hopefully the Toronto Raptors are able to get the tank back on track with their next game, a very important tank game against the Brooklyn Nets. They play that one in Brooklyn tomorrow at 7:30. That one is going to be one to watch. There might be some shenanigans going on. Who is going to play? Who are the Raptors and the Nets going to rest? Are the Raptors going to win or lose this game? Because the Brooklyn Nets, there's some big time tank seeding implications here. The Nets are 23-48. The Raptors are 25-46. So this is a big rubber match here. If the Toronto Raptors could lose, that would definitely bring them a lot closer to overtaking the Brooklyn Nets as a top lottery team. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. I'll be interested to see what the outcome is, and that is the episode. What do you think about Jase Richardson? Do you think that the fit concerns are too much to select him with the Toronto Raptors pick in the lottery? Or do you think that the talent is there? Would you be interested in picking him, in the later lottery, the 10 to 15 zone where the Raptors might be headed? Let me know here in the comments, and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Raptors fans, love reading those comments in the comment section and on social media. I love answering your questions. We are just undoubtedly the best fan base in the NBA. And if you haven't already, please like this video, just slap a like on there, hit the bell icon, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That really, really helps the channel grow, helps the algorithm know to put this content in front of other Raptors fans like you. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.